Get your study guide out. We're going to skip the ecology stuff for now. I think we skipped that last time as well. The ecology is pretty easy. You hopefully can work through that on your own if I don't get it up on YouTube. As far as cell biology, I believe we already covered pro versus eukaryotic cells. I want to do a very quick verbal review of that. So once you guys are ready and you have your stuff in front of you, please, somebody raise your hand and just summarize the prokaryote versus eukaryote bit of review. Big staring at me. All right, go ahead. Yes, yeah.
Prokaryotes have no nucleus and they're not membrane bound and they go through binary fission for the reproduction process.
Good.
And eukaryotes, they have a nucleus and they're usually a lot bigger. Let me go into the bacteria stuff.
Yeah, hold that thought 1 second. Just be careful the way you worded it, okay? Technically, a prokaryotic cell, the cell is membrane bound. All cells have a cell membrane. I think what you meant to say was...
It lacks membrane-enclosed organelles.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a nucleus, but it also, prokaryotic cells, like bacterial cells, they also do not have other membrane-bound organelles. What is the only organelle you do find in a prokaryotic cell? Ribosomes. All cells need to make proteins. Of course, it also has a chromosome. Of course, it also has a cytoplasm. And again, all cells have a cell membrane. True. Okay. Binary fissions, the way they reproduce. We're going to stop there for now. Any questions or comments about that? All right, so the next part on our list, the next topic on our list is plant versus animal cells. This is a little old school. When I was in school, we talked about plant versus animal cells. We didn't talk a lot about fungi. We didn't talk a lot about protists. And we certainly didn't talk a lot about bacteria, all right? We are going to still just review plants versus animals really quickly. First of all, what type of cells are plants and animals made up of? Raise your hand.
Eukaryotic.
Eukaryotic cells. So from here on out, for this section, we're talking specifically about eukaryotic cells, okay? What are the main organelles that you find in plant cells that you do not find in animal cells? And give me a really quick function. All right, let's do one at a time.
The cell wall.
Cell wall. What's the cell wall made out of? Go ahead.
Cellulose.
Cellulose, true. What does the cell wall do?
It protects the cell and also like prevents bursting from the large vacuole in the middle.
Yeah, so it really helps it keep its shape and structure, whether the cell's filling with extra water or not. It really keeps it protected and again, stable structure, definitely. In animal cells, there's an organelle or a part of the cell that actually helps maintain cellular shape and structure. What is that?
The cytoskeleton.
Good, the cytoskeleton, very good. All right, so cell wall in plant cells. Do protists have cell walls? Yes or no? Raise your hand. Take a guess. Protists.
Yes.
No! I mean, good try, but no. No cell wall in protists. What about fungi? Cell wall, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. You're brave after I just yelled at Chris. Yes. Cell wall in fungi, okay? It's a little different than in plants. What else do you find in plant cells you don't find in animal cells? Raise your hand.
A large vacuole.
A large centralized vacuole. In plants, what does it mostly contain?
Water.
Water. It stores a lot of the water for a plant. Do animal cells have vacuoles? So, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, they're just smaller, and usually there are many of them and not just one centralized vacuole. We don't have to worry about storing lots and lots of water in our cells, so usually the vacuoles are storing small amounts of water, small amounts of nutrients, or maybe even small amounts of waste material, okay? I should be writing this stuff on the board. Plant versus animal. So we had the cell wall, and the vacuole. All right, and then what is the moneymaker in plant cells? Maybe somebody who needs the point. All right, no, I think everybody's gotten a point. All right, somebody raise your hand. Tell me what I'm looking for. What's the last big thing? Chloroplasts. What do chloroplasts do? Raise your hand. Keep going.
They make the food for the cell.
True, they make the food for the cell through what process? Photosynthesis. What is a plant cell actually using to make that food? What is it taking in to make that food? It uses sunlight to like catalyze the reaction, true, but what molecule is actually turned into sugar, turned into food? Good, carbon dioxide. So you have your chloroplasts that take CO2 basically and some other stuff and make sugars from it.
I just have a question. Did you say that the cytoskeleton was in both or just one?
Both, because the cytoskeleton has a couple of different functions. It also allows like organelles to move around inside the cell. But in animal cells, it has a strong support function because we don't have a cell wall around our cells. All right, good question. Any other questions? All right, is there anything else I'm missing here?
Are lysosomes only in animal cells?
Traditionally, lysosomes were thought to only be in animal cells, but I'm not going to list it here because we realize now that there are many plant cells that do have an occasional lysosome here and there. And that makes sense because all cells do have to get rid of waste materials, break down waste materials. They're just not as prevalent as they are in animal cells.
There just seem to be more common in animal cells, like how there's just a large vacuole in a plant and there's several small ones in animals.
Yeah. Definitely more prevalent in animal cells, but you do find them in plant cells. Good question. All right, any other questions about this? All right. Turn your page over. Let's do a really quick list of organelles and their functions. We've already done some, but we're going to repeat those as we need to, all right? And again, we are specifically talking about eukaryotic cells because remember, your prokaryotic cells don't have most of these organelles, okay? So please, somebody, raise your hand, pick an organelle. Any organelle will do.
Mitochondria.
Mitochondria. Do you find mitochondria in animal cells, yes or no? Yes, do you find it, just shout it out, do you find mitochondria in fungal cells, yes or no? Yes. Do you find mitochondria in protists?
Yes.
Yes. Do you find mitochondria in plant cells?
Yes.
Yes.
Don't make me kick you out. The answer is yes. Listen to me. Even though plants make the sugar, they can't use the sugar for energy for processes. So they also have mitochondria to then break down the sugar to make ATP. So it's a little bit redundant. They're using ATP to build sugars and they're breaking down the sugars to use to make ATP, but that's what happens, okay? You find mitochondria in all eukaryotic cells. All right, somebody remind me the process that's going on in and around the mitochondria.
Cellular respiration.
Good, cellular respiration. Almost everybody in every one of my classes lost points on the systems test on an open response question, so make sure you're paying attention to what I'm about to say, okay? Somebody raise your hand and give me the equation for cellular respiration.
C6.
Go slow, because I write slow.
C6, H12, O6,
What is this?
glucose.
Good.
Plus 6O2,
I'm sorry, plus 6 what?
O2.
Oh, okay.
I forget, is there H2? No. And then 6 CO2.
Mm-hmm.
ATP. I don't know one. There's another.
Anybody know the other byproduct here?
6H2O.
Good, 6H2O. So water is a byproduct. It's a waste product. CO2 is a waste product, and the whole purpose is to make molecules that our body can use. ATP is like stored up usable energy, okay? Here's what I want to mention really quick, because again, a lot of you guys lost a point or two on that open response question. The question was, how does the nervous system and respiratory system work together if, what was the wording on it? If you are exercising, I think was the question? Okay, good, thank you. First of all, as I said, I think last time we met, sometime, I hope I said it, if not, I'm saying it now. Your nervous system sends electrical signals to other nerve cells or muscles or glands. That's it. No other tissue in your body can be stimulated by electrical signals. So the first thing I was looking for in that open response is the fact that the brain sends a signal to the diaphragm, which is the muscle that allows you to breathe. I also wanted you to point out that you're breathing in oxygen and out CO2 because every cell in your body is doing cellular respiration. You need oxygen for cellular respiration to happen. So just saying you're breathing in oxygen and not explaining that it's in order for your cells to do cellular respiration to gain extra ATP, you're not giving me the whole story, okay? Make sure you realize breathing is related to every cell doing cellular respiration, okay? Does that make sense? Questions about that? All right, good. Somebody pick another organelle. Raise your hand. Any organelle will do. Don't all raise your hand. Are you yawning?
No.
Oh, I shouldn't be so dramatic on video. All right, give me an organelle.
Ribosomes.
Ribosomes. Do you find ribosomes in animal cells?
Yes.
Heck yes. Do you find ribosomes in plant cells?
Yes.
Yes. Protists.
Yes.
Yes. Fungi.
Yes.
Prokaryotes.
Yes.
All cells need ribosomes. Ribosomes take the DNA and use it to make proteins. That's like the whole central dogma of life, okay? All cells have ribosomes. Even though I just told you what they do, somebody raise your hand and please remind me.
DNA to make protein.
Yeah, it actually in eukaryotic cell uses RNA to make proteins, but the RNA comes by copying the DNA, which we'll review that in a minute, okay? So it makes proteins. What's another fancy word for proteins? Raise your hand. Polypeptides, good. So if you ever see any picture, peptide, if you ever see any picture that shows a peptide being made, right away you gotta think proteins, okay? Ribosomes are made up of proteins themselves and a certain kind of RNA. What kind of RNA are they made up of?
Ribosomal RNA.
Good, so they're made up of proteins and rRNA. What is the process called that actually makes the proteins? Raise your hand.
Translation.
Translation. Remember, you're translating from the DNA and RNA nucleotide language into the amino acid protein language, okay? All right, questions about ribosomes? We'll do more with transcription translation in a bit. All right, somebody give me another organelle. Many to choose from. I should see lots and lots of hands. You're yawning. What the heck? Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, Golgi apparatus.
Ooh, my favorites. Golgi. I actually want to hold off on the Golgi because I think it's important to discuss a couple organelles first, okay? What organelles do I want to discuss first?
ER.
You're stealing her thunder, man.
Oh,
Say it again.
the ER.
The ER, true. The ER, what does ER stand for? Not emergency room. Endoplasmic reticulum. There are two types. What are the two types? Raise your hands. Smooth and rough. Why? What's the difference between them?
Rough carries ribosomes and smooth doesn't.
Once upon a time, somebody looked at the ER under a microscope and they saw that it looked rough like sandpaper. The little grains of sand are actually the ribosomes. So rough ER has a ton of ribosomes on it. Smooth ER does not. So on which, now we know this doesn't make the proteins, but if the ribosomes are on the ER, which one of these two is involved in protein synthesis? Easy question. Hands, 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 hands. Now it's your turn.
The ER.
Which one?
The rough ER.
The rough ER would be involved in protein synthesis because it has the ribosomes. So what is the smooth ER for? Good. Yeah, if your cell needs to make some lipids or if it needs to make something that's not a protein, so it's basically where all non-protein synthesis occurs, okay? All right. The way it works is this, and you need to understand this. I think that when we did this way back when, you all got it. You have to remember it though for MCAS, okay? If a protein needs to be made by the cell, where do the instructions come from to make that protein?
The nucleus.
The nucleus. So the DNA has the gene, which is the instruction to make protein. The DNA is changed or copied into RNA. Then the RNA, let's say there's endoplasmic reticulum with ribosomes. This ribosome attached to the endoplasmic reticulum can actually read the messenger RNA and build the protein. Again, that's translation, okay? What happens to the protein after it's made by a ribosome on the ER?
It goes into transport vesicles.
So-
It goes to the Golgi body.
Good. Where does the transport vesicle come from?
Like the ER?
Remember, these organelles are made of the same membrane as the cell membrane. It's phospholipid bilayer. So what happens is a little piece of the ER actually pinches off and that becomes the vesicle. Okay, so this vesicle pinches off the ER. And then where does it go after that?
Golgi
The
body.
Golgi, true. So you have these other stacks of membranes. The vesicle fuses with the Golgi. And what happens in the Golgi?
Oh, no, no.
You sure?
Doesn't it like package and like send out?
It modifies it a little bit, packages it, and sends it either out of the cell or to the right place in the cell. How does it send it out of the Golgi?
Goes through the cell membrane,
What is this called again?
the vesicle.
Yeah, another vesicle pops off the Golgi now with the finished protein inside. And by finishing that protein, by modifying it and packaging it, the cell knows, oh, we need to keep it here and maybe it's going to another part of the cell, or we need to get rid of it and it could fuse with the cell membrane and release its contents, okay? So the ER, smooth ER, is where the ribosomes are, so it's involved in protein synthesis. The proteins can travel through the ER, but off in a vesicle, fuse with the Golgi modifies it, packages it, and sends it to the right location, okay? Now what would you, so that's sort of the function for both of these. If this vesicle coming off the Golgi has digestive enzymes that the cell is going to use to break stuff down, what kind of vesicle is this?
Lysosome.
A lysosome. So, lysosome. So basically, a lysosome is just a vesicle with proteins inside. It just so happens that the protein inside is digestive enzymes. Proteins inside are digestive enzymes to break down waste material. Okay? Make sure you see how these things are connected. I see some of you writing. Questions about this whole process? Go ahead.
Is there a name for it?
Well, you're combining several different things here. We're talking about transcription, translation to make the protein, and then what's happening on a cellular level, the protein traveling through the ER in a vesicle to the Golgi, modified, and then out of the cell. So you're combining your transcription, your translation, and cell biology.
Where is the mRNA broken down after it's used? That way it can be reused again.
Good question. Where do you think, what organelle do you think might break down the messenger RNA after it's been used up?
Lysosome.
The lysosomes.
Oh.
So again, it's all connected. The lysosome could technically break it down like anything else, and when it breaks it down, that stuff doesn't just disappear, it gets reused by the cell. Good question. Any other questions? All right, who's really, really hot? All right, good, at least we're all on the same page. All right, there are a couple more organelles we need to cover. Don't lose me now, you guys. I need another organelle. Nucleus, very important. What is the basic general function of the nucleus? General function of the nucleus.
Stores DNA and has the instructions to make proteins.
And instructions to make proteins, that is the DNA. So it just stores the DNA, it stores the genetic material, it stores the instructions to make proteins.
Also creates ribosomes. I know there's a separate part, but it's still in the nucleus.
So you have your cell. First of all, do you find a nucleus in plant cells?
Yes.
Animal cells?
Yes.
Protists?
Yes.
Fungi?
Yes.
Bacteria?
No.
No! Alright, good. So you're at least all awake. Go ahead.
Are the coded instructions for important molecules or just proteins?
Say it again to me.
Like the coded instructions that are in the nucleus, is it just for proteins or can it be for other molecules?
It's basically just for proteins. The coded instructions in the nucleus, which would be all of the DNA, a set of instructions would be one gene, all right? So a gene is just a segment of DNA that has the code for a specific protein. That code is always for a protein. True. Now, it could be for a protein that can tell the cell how to make a carbohydrate, but that would be an enzyme, that would still be a protein product, okay? All right, so the nucleus stores the DNA, all the DNA. What is it called if it's in this jumbled mess? Raise your hand. Chromatin, true. And you usually have a really dark staining spot, and this is where, now remember, your ribosomes are made up of proteins and rRNA. This is the part of the nucleus that's responsible for making those ribosome parts. What is that part of the nucleus called? Nucleolus, true. Make sure you know the difference between those, okay? And we do have a whole section on DNA, probably be something I cover in D block and record, but we'll see how far we get today. All right, you guys hang in there a little bit. I'll let you take a minute to stretch and wake up. Just let's get through the cell parts. So the nucleus contains the DNA. The DNA controls all of, it has the code to make the recipe to make all the proteins. Make sure you know what chromatin is versus, what is that called? Chromosome. Why did I draw it like this instead of like this? What's the difference between these two? Now I'm jumping way ahead to a whole different section of review here. Go ahead.
With the one on the right being homologous chromosomes, which is one from your mom and one from your dad.
No, this would be homologous. So help her out.
That's when during mitosis, like they're replicated.
Before mitosis, true.
Sister chromatid.
These are your sister chromatids, all right? Make sure, and again, we're gonna review this a little bit more, but make sure you understand that one chromosome looks like this. After the DNA is copied, you have it attached in this typical X shape. This is just the copy of the DNA. Your sister chromatids are attached. Your homologous chromosomes, one from mom and one from dad, are not attached. So one more second, after DNA synthesis, these homologs would then look like this, but your homologs do not attach to each other.
Well, yeah, it's just looks like you have two homologs that are X's.
Yeah, after DNA synthesis, this is what they would look like. Then these would separate if it's mitosis, if it's meiosis, there's other stuff going on. All right, any other questions or comments about this? That's all I'm gonna say about the nucleus for now. Again, we have a whole review section on DNA. All right, what other organelles did I miss? Any?
Chloroplast?
Yeah, I know we mentioned it, but I want to mention it again quick so you can make sure. I mean, cell biology is like a very core topic in biology. These are the questions you need to get right, all right? So your chloroplasts, somebody remind me what types of cells they're in and what they do.
Plant cells and
Plant cells. And some protists. What kind of protist? Give me an example of a protist that might have chloroplasts. Algae, definitely. Any green protist is doing photosynthesis. The green color actually comes from the chlorophyll inside the chloroplast. All right, and Maya, continue on. What's the function?
they perform photosynthesis for the cell.
True. And just to make you guys think a little bit, somebody tell me the equation for photosynthesis, please.
C6CO2 plus 6H2O plus ATP.
It's not, well, it gets confusing because the process of photosynthesis does involve ATP, but it's not necessarily
Sunlight.
Yeah, sunlight. Good.
And then arrow plus C6H12O6.
C6H12O6, that's the whole point, is to make the sugar.
Plus 6O2.
And this is the waste product, the byproduct that it gets rid of. Now, I don't want to confuse you guys, but I do want to give you a heads up. When you get to AP Biology, you will learn, when you get to AP Biology, you will learn the details of photosynthesis. And there are two different stages. The first stage does involve making ATP. Then the second stage involves using that ATP to actually build your sugars. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's a little above and beyond MCAS biology. You don't need to know that right now. Okay, what you need to know now is carbon dioxide gets rearranged into sugar in the presence of sunlight if you add water. Okay? Questions about that? All right, we already mentioned the mitochondria, but I just want to mention it again here. Somebody raise your hand and tell me what cells have mitochondria. And what cells have mitochondria and basically what it does.
We already wrote this down.
It doesn't matter, do it again.
Wait, what?
Repetition is key.
Wait,
What?
both cells,
What cells have mitochondria?
like all cells,
All cells.
except for
All eukaryotic.
All eukaryotic cells, true. And what does it do? Boy, I need a crickets button.
cellular respiration.
Cellular respiration, what's the point? Why do you even do cellular respiration?
Energy.
To make
Creates energy.
a usable energy molecule, which is?
ATP.
ATP, very good. I honestly have lost track. What am I missing here for organelles? Is that everything?
Vacuoles.
Good, what is a vacuole? We already talked about it, but talk about it again. In general, not necessarily the one in plants. What is vacuole?
It's responsible for storage.
It is responsible for storage. It can store anything, water, nutrients, waste products. What like actually is a vacuole? Like what surrounds the vacuole? What makes the outside part of the vacuole?
Membrane.
Same membrane as your cell membrane, same membrane as your ER, same membrane as your Golgi. It's just a type of, lysosomes, the vesicles coming off the ER, coming off the Golgi, coming into the cell in endocytosis, they're all the same thing. It's just what's inside that gives them a different meaning, okay? Good. Storage of any material, vacuole. What am I missing? Cytoplasm? Alright, what am I missing?
Cytoskeleton.
Ooh, cytoskeleton, good one. Alright, we mentioned cytoskeleton before. And there's a lot of detail to the cytoskeleton, but again, a little above and beyond general biology. So in general, what does the cytoskeleton do?
It's a network of proteins that change cell shape and are involved in cell organelles.
Okay, first part is really important. It is just a network of different proteins. It's made up of proteins. So your cytoskeleton can be made by the cell just like any other protein. It's not a membrane-bound organelle. It's just a series of proteins. And Lauren, tell me the functions you said?
It's involved in cell organelles.
Good, so it can allow organelles to move.
It gives cells some structure.
It does give your cells, especially if you're a cell without a cell wall, like our cells, it does give a little bit of structure. Anything else? Keep going, Lauren.
Don't the microtubules, which are part of the cytoskeleton, help with cell division?
Yeah, certain parts of the cytoskeleton are important for cell division. Specifically like the spindle apparatus. Any others?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If it's just proteins, is it found in bacteria cells as well?
No, and that's a good question, and bacterial cells don't really need it. First of all, they don't have any organelles to be worrying about moving around. They have a cell wall, so they don't really need the structure, and they don't, binary fission's a lot simpler than like mitosis is, so they don't really need this as well. Really good question. All right. Any other functions here? I think that pretty much covers what you need to know. All right, I can see you guys getting a little sleepy. One more, and then I'll let you take a couple of minutes break. What about the cytoplasm? What is the cytoplasm? Somebody raise your hand.
The liquid filling in the cell?
Yeah, it's like a fluid inside the cell that all the organelles float around in. Now it has plenty of stuff dissolved in it. There's a lot of chemicals. You always have your ADPs and your phosphate groups and your amino acids. You have a lot of stuff in here in addition to the organelles, okay? And all cells have this material. All right. Any organelle that I missed? Lauren, I know you did a nice study guide. Did I miss any? Maya, you had your hand up. Did I miss any?
Membrane?
Cell membrane. We're going to actually do a little more detail about the cell membrane, so hold that thought. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say cell wall.
Cell wall, which we only mentioned briefly. If you have a cell wall, first of all, what kind of organisms have a cell wall? Raise your hand. We've already done it, but I want to make sure you're paying attention. Don't be sleeping. Plants, definitely. What else? Good. Bacteria. Made of something totally different, but they do have a cell wall. And what else?
Fungus.
Fungi, very good. And what is now, the material that makes up the cell wall may be different in these types of organisms, but the function's the same. What is the function of the cell wall?
It's to protect the cell.
Protect the cell, give it structure and support. Is it outside or inside compared to the membrane? Raise your hand.
Outside.
Outside the membrane? And how does it differ from function compared to the cell membrane? Basically, what's the function of the cell membrane?
To allow passage of nutrients and wastes across the cell.
Yeah. Basically, you can say both the cell membrane and the cell wall protect the cell, but they do it in totally different ways. The membrane protects the cell by letting certain things in and out of the cell. The cell wall protects it just like the walls in our building protect us. It's just allows it to keep its structure, not sort of implode on itself. All right. Did I miss any others? Are you sure? Who wants a break? Half of you raise your hand and half of you are like, no breaks, that's ridiculous. All right, you guys, listen, we have to keep going. If you want to pause this, Maya. I forgot all about it for a second, now I'm acutely aware.